What is up, y'all? It is your girl Jazz from All That Jazz, coming back with that part 2. The first part I was just sharing about just the challenges of being a black woman, and I think the first was kind of just talking about the lack of celebration of black beauty and what it means to be, a black woman, and just feel like any other woman that feels beautiful in her own right because of how she looks. I think that there's a lot of opposition that black women face, whether it's coming from media and the lack of representation, or if it's from men and the lack of pursuit or even acceptance of like how we naturally look. So that was kind of the message or the focus in the first video. This next part I want to talk, it's an extension, which is in dating, marriage, but there are other areas that I also want to address too. So like I said, this is just a rant. I don't have like a checklist of like, oh, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that. Literally, as more things come to my mind, I'm like, oh, well, let me make a part 3 and 4 and so on. So yeah, so when I guess when I look at dating and marriage in particular, obviously, I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, black women are married less than anyone else and whatever else. And I think a lot of people say that talking point from the point of like, it's you guys' fault. You guys are not, I don't know, marriage material. And there's a lot of things that can go into that. I also think, literally, thoughts coming to mind, I do not mind also making a video to address things that black women that I personally see as a black woman, that I'm like, I do think we need to address these things or work on these things. So I don't take away from that, right? I don't think that to acknowledge how I feel and what I'm seeing means that there's a lack of acknowledgement of things that we can also do. I feel like there's a lot, even spiritual matters, that goes behind why a lot of black women are not married. And just as like anything else, things are spiritual before they are natural. So there are supernatural things that are affecting us in the natural as well. So I don't want to get super deep into that right now, but I'm just saying there's more than what is on the surface. That said, I would talk about right now my own personal reality when it comes to being a black woman and being in relationships / getting married. Now, again, as I started the first video and I said that I acknowledge that there are things in the beauty industry that impact all women, but there is a subset of experiences that impact black women, I honestly think, more greatly than anyone else. So the same is true when it comes to dating, marriage, relationships, you name it. So I think by and large, we're living in a time where less and less people are focused on building a family. I do think that there's a rise in selfishness and focus on self and all of those things. I also think that social media, online dating, all can play a part in why everyone is like, oh, I'm not going to settle down for you because there's someone bigger, better, greater, whatever. So I think that there's a lot of that, and I do feel like it is a challenge in general for anyone to get into a relationship. I also think that anytime a woman enters a relationship, I do feel like she's at greater risk to, I don't want to say lose herself, but I think that there's more at stake for a woman getting into a relationship than I do think that there is for a man. I'm not saying men don't sacrifice or go through things, but I think that the stakes are much higher for a woman anytime that she decides to be relational with a man than it is the other way around. And I think that that's the case for women, period. But I have heard of statistics where black women experience everything, literally sexual assault, and I hope I don't get flagged for that, but all the isms that black women experience at larger rates than any other woman. In addition, I think we're, unfortunately, as a group, still leading in single motherhood and so on and so forth. Like literally plagued with hardships. When you think of Black women in romantic relationships, I think you think of two polarities. You either think of the ism ridden, right? And she's just going through it. She is potentially a single mother. She is going through all types of hardship. Or you think of the exact opposite and you think she's extremely successful in her own right and single. Like, there's no, you see very little representation of a woman in the middle. Relatively successful, Black woman in the middle. Relatively successful and also in a fulfilling, healthy romantic relationship. And I think that there's a lot of reasons why this is. And if I were to get into all of it, it's going to be way too long. This is what I will say of it. And what makes me sad a little bit is that I feel like a lot of Black women will tell you they desire to be with a Black man. And I think there's one prevailing reason why that is. I think it ultimately comes down to understanding. Like I acknowledged in the first video, there is an understanding that we have of each other that no one else will have. And specific to the plights and the experiences that we go through. You know, I've had white friends, love them to death. But there are things that I will say that I'm like, I'll give an example. I'll tell a little story time real quick. About a week ago, I went to this neighborhood because I was trying to go to an Airbnb that my sister set up. It was a whole ordeal. And I told my sister, I was like, well, I told her this later on. So I told my friend this story, who happens to be white. And then I told my sister this story, who obviously is Black. I got to the same part in this story. They both had completely different reactions. So I told them I went to this neighborhood. It was a very nice neighborhood. Very, very nice neighborhood. Like, super expensive cars. I could just tell. I was like, oh no. And it was late. So I'm supposed to be going up to the door of this Airbnb to be at the Airbnb. And for whatever reason, I couldn't find the access code. I'm asking the lady for the access code. She doesn't give it to me. She tells me that it's in the notes. I'm like, okay, well, lady, I've already gone through the notes. It's not in there. All that said, I'm like, it's late. My vehicle is a vehicle that has not been in this neighborhood. This is a really nice neighborhood. More than likely, there are a lot of white people here. So I told my friend that, and I told her, I was like, I didn't get out the car. And I ended up leaving while I was trying to wait for the lady to respond to me. And she was like, why did you leave? I said, because I was like, I don't want to be in a really nice neighborhood late at night, and that's literally not where I live. Like, nothing about that sounds good. Because I'm like, all I need is one nosy neighbor to be walking down the street and be like, do you live here? That's the last thing that I don't need to have that conversation. As soon as I said that thing to her, she kind of looked and like rolled her eyes like, I don't think it's that serious. And I'm like, I left it there because I'm like, you don't understand. You would never know how serious that situation can get. It can escalate very quickly. I told my sister this story the very next morning. I said the exact same thing. I told her, I said, well, I won't say my sister's name, but I told her, I was like, I had to leave while I was waiting for the lady to respond to me with the access code, because she was like, I know you didn't want to be in that neighborhood. She was like, Jazz, was it a really nice neighborhood? I said, very. And she was like, oh yeah, I understand why you left. Obviously, she's my sister, but she's speaking from the knowledge of knowing what it's like to be Black. And she knows how easily we can be policed. Somebody can walk up to us in a split second and wonder why we have access to something that they don't deem that we should have access to. That could be a vehicle that seems too expensive and out of our tax bracket. That could be an environment that it feels like we don't belong in. So there's now this policing, there's this questioning of, why are you here? Even though it's none of their business. So I, explain that, and my whole point of that is to say, those experiences, I wouldn't have to break that all the way down for a black man. He would know. If anything, he'd be the one saying, oh, if I'm here, we really got to get out of here. Because they might, keyword might, take into account that you're a black woman. They don't care about it being me. I can't afford to get aggressive. There are repercussions for me that are much greater. Both of us understand that. We can look at each other and not say a thing, but no, we need to leave. And sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like, you can't really change that. You just have to maneuver around it. But not only do you have to maneuver, you have to have people in your corner that understand why it's necessary for you to maneuver in that way. And when you don't have someone that understands that, or even worse, they challenge that and they're like, no, let's stay here. They don't understand the risk that they're putting you in and the danger that they could potentially be putting you in. They're putting you in that situation and don't even realize that they're doing that. And then get defensive when you try and explain, hey, life is different for me than it is for you. And I'm not trying to be oppression minded or victim minded, but I'm telling you, I have to think in a way that you might not have to. This might sound like an unnecessary inconvenience, but for me, I'm like, this thing that didn't seem like it should have been much could have turned into a lot. So all that being said, I think at the root of it, it's the desire to be able to wear our hair naturally and not have to answer questions about, wait, so what are those knots on top of your hair? I had Bantu knots on before I came here. What are those knots on your hair? And, well, wow, it takes you a really long time. Like, I don't want to explain I don't want to explain me. I don't want to explain my life, my mannerisms, my movements, none of that. I don't want to explain things. I just want to rest, right? And I think for black women, largely the number one reason, yes, you know, some of it is probably attraction or familiarity or whatever else, but at the end of the day, I think it's like, I don't want to explain my life. Like, I just want to be able to live and you understand my life. And so I think that's the number one reason why black women tend to be very race loyal, you know, and maybe out of the thought of like, do other ethnicities actually find us attractive? Because we're not used to being celebrated by large in a way that's not sexual, in a way that we're looked at as feminine and as beautiful. And the only times that it feels like you're celebrated for being feminine is in times where you feel like you're being performative, where you feel like you're stifling your voice. But anytime that you're authentic, it's like, am I attractive? Do they find me? You know what I mean? It just feels weird. And so I think that that's why so many black women gravitate towards just solely sticking with black men. But we also look at that and we find ourselves dissatisfied, largely. And I'm not, again, this is not me coming at black men and coming after them, but I'm saying I think that there's been a great deal of not only, you know, dissatisfaction, but I think it's like, it sucks. It hurts to feel like at the end of the day, I have your back, I'm in your corner, and you don't have mine. You know, I'm the come up woman. I'm the humble woman. I'm the woman that you can be with when things are low. But the moment that you have greater aspirations, now it's about a woman that is better than me. And that always looks like a woman that doesn't look like me, you know? And so I think it's just this bittersweet. And then, you know, a black woman decides to date outside of her race, and then there's, you know, are you being fetishized? And that's a whole topic in itself. So I think it's kind of like, where are you able to experience authenticity in the realm of love, you know, and protection, which is another thing. And now I'm venturing into another part of it. I think as a black woman, there is a feeling of like the aggression that people say that they see from black women. I really feel like it's because there's a lack of protection. You know, we're in a workplace, we're not the ones protected. a white woman can make it seem like she was a victim very quickly, even though she was the source of provocation the whole time. But the moment that you respond, if you do, you're the villain. So in the workplace, you're not expecting anyone to have any form of loyalty to you. But you also know that you can't work in a mediocre sense. You have to go above and beyond. It makes you a threat. But you're doing that for survival. You're not doing that so that you can surpass everybody. You're not doing that so you because you're so comfortable and you just love the job. You're doing that because you're like, literally, I'm trying to survive in this environment. This environment that allows you to be mediocre has a greater standard for me. Just for us to be seen in the same level. All you gotta do is cry. People don't know what to do when I cry. Other than walk away and say, hey, this is unprofessional. We need to deal with our emotions in another way. Literally. Like, there's just a lack of feeling of protection. You can't be super soft because you have people coming at you in a way that is very direct. So it's like your femininity isn't fully acknowledged. So then, but if you're masculine, then yep, she's her stereotype. It's an angry black woman, an aggressive black woman. So then now, and this is a strategy that I feel like I've developed over time, is this lack of, you have to have this stoicism, this emotionlessness where you never get too emotional. You don't raise your voice. You always have to respond calm and collected. Everyone else could be yelling, screaming, crying, you name it. But you have to be the one that always responds in this calm manner. I had somebody recently tell me that I was very direct. And I said something that I meant. But when I said it, they said that I was really aggressive with them. And I was like, I was not aggressive with you. I was not. I was direct with you. I said what I said and I meant it. But I was not yelling at you or aggressive with you. Because I was actually doing my very best to hold that back. Because I already know what will happen if I, do that. So I just think that romantically there's a feeling of like, it's hard. When you feel like as a black woman, you're different. Black men don't quite know how to take you. Other men, you don't know how you're going to take them because you're kind of like, do you like me for real? Or is this an experiment? And it just, I think for me, it's kind of like, you're almost like, who will protect me? Who will see to it that I'm okay? Who will allow me to be feminine? Because I want to be. I want to not have to be tough emotionally. But everything that I'm experiencing makes me have to be strategic. Makes me have to show up calculated. Makes me have to show up with not too much emotion, not too much heart on my sleeve. Because there is attack. It's like, I don't know people. I don't know another group of people that people make hate videos about and make fun of them the way that they do black women. I mean, black men in relationship with white women, they make fun of black women, right? Then you got white women who are talking about how black women are not even competition. For what? Like, in my mind is like, if we're really not an issue, why are you guys making us such an issue? That's the crazy part. Meanwhile, black women are out here literally just trying to survive. I don't get it. So it's like, in one breath you're a target, but in another breath you're completely overlooked. It's like life is gaslighting. And I just don't get it. And all you want to do is just live. God forbid, well. And sometimes it feels like the only way through is just like complete isolation. Which I know it's not. I'm ranting. I'm not giving solution. I'm not giving encouragement quite in this moment. I'm just talking about this is how it feels. Because it makes me feel at the end of the day, it's like, well, you know, if you have black friends, there are different types of black people. So it's like, am I around black people that I actually align with? Because I don't align with all of the different types of blackness, and every black person knows what I mean when I say there's different types of black people, right? So it's like, you want to join up with somebody who's equally yoked. You don't want to be with somebody who is bringing you down, or, you know, or someone who you just don't feel like you match with, right? But then when you're around white people and you have white friends, you're kind of like, man, I feel like this part of me I have to ignore. Or if I even talk about some of the discomforts or experiences that I have as a black person, oh, now I'm bringing up the race card, and it's like, no, this is life. Like, it's a privilege that you don't have to think about this stuff, and I'm not mad at you for it, but I do have to think about this kind of stuff. I have to move calculated. I cannot afford to just pretend that everyone in the world just does not see color. You know, I can't think that way. You know, so that's hard. Then it's like, relationally, like, do I venture out, as they say, like, you know, stop trying to be so race loyal to black men, venture out and date somebody of another ethnicity, and then you question, for one, is their attraction genuine? As genuine as it would be to another woman of his same ethnicity? Or the question is, will he understand? Will he have the capacity to endure hard things that he may unfortunately be brought into because he's dealing with a black woman? And as a result, potentially to have black children. Like, there's just so much. Then it's like, do I be with a black man? Because if I be with a black man, I'm like, I cannot be with a black man that has self-hate. Like, there are layers. So then now at the end of it all, you ask yourself, am I cool with just being single forever? And increasingly that answer is looking like yes. With good reason. I don't know. Like I said, this is real raw and ranting. Real raw and ranting. I like that. But yeah, there are a lot of things. And the last thing that I will address and touch on, I don't even know if at this point this is making any sense. I hope that it is. I think it is just, how do I put this into words? I have friends and people I've talked to for a long time that most of the people I interact with are not black. And I would not at all say that I'm a black woman that wants to be white or aspires to be another race. Not at all. I absolutely love blackness. I don't love the black experience all the time. But that's not the same thing as I don't love my hair, my skin, my features, me. You know, those are two different things. And so I think it's just the relatability is not there. And I get tired of feeling like, as a black person, everyone's talking about black fatigue and they're tired of us and whatever else. And I'm like, I get it, you know, in the sense that I'm tired of the representation that black people have put out into the world, of ratchetness, I guess you could say. But when you're not that, quote, ratchet black person, and you're not promoting debauchery and all of that, so then now I'm that person that's respectable and collected, and I guess you could say the respectability politics and all of that. I do think that I think it's helpful, but I do think that it also does not change the fact that the moment you start talking about the disadvantages that you experience as a black person, that people automatically write it off. They think that you're complaining, you're playing the race card, and it's like, what does that card get me? What has that card gotten me so far? I'm just telling you, and it feels like I have to turn this side of my life off in the presence of certain people because they get annoyed at the fact that it's like, black people are, you know, if it's really that bad, they need to start with their fatherlessness in the community. You know, black men need to do better, and black women need to start making better decisions when it comes to the men that they're dating, and black people just need to be accountable. And it's like, am I not accountable? I'm not talking far off. I'm talking about you and me. And I went to work and I had an experience there. And you're telling me that it's in my head. You are talking about blackness and black women like I'm not a black woman. I'm the same black woman that, as your friend, you say is different than all of these other black women. But yet now I'm bringing up a black woman's experience and you're telling me that black women need to choose better in dating. Shoot, I haven't chosen at all. Because it's like analysis paralysis. You're just like, yeah, I'm not seeing anything good, so I'm not choosing at all. So where does the choosing better come into play with this? Where does the fatherlessness that you're talking about come into play with my life when I'm just telling you that I do feel like I was being racially profiled? Now all of a sudden it's me playing the race card? No. You know? So I think it's just like, where do you go? At the end of it, that's my question. It's like, where do I go with all of this? In the earth. And I hate to sound so like quintessential, but, or existential, not quintessential, existential, but it is like, God, what is this plight that you've given us? You know, what are we supposed to do with this experience? And I just can't wait till the heaviness of this experience is lifted. I know I'm not tripping. It's very much real. And are there parts that can be contributed to in a better way? For sure. I don't take away that there are things that we can do on a collective basis and on an individual basis. But in the meantime, I think what I look for is understanding, listening, and from other black women, relatability. I think from black men, I look for accountability. I look for them to own up and say, you know what, when I look around, every dark-skinned black man in my family has chosen a lighter-skinned woman, and be real with that. Instead of cower down and say, well, it was just my wife and I just, you know, I liked her. No, there is a colorism issue. You can't just say that Chris Brown making the comments, no darkies allowed. And then Kodak Black, I don't want to be with a dark-skinned woman because, and then Lil Wayne in his comments. And then you see every NBA player is with a woman that is like 3 shades, 4 shades, 5 shades lighter than him. And say that there's not an issue. Come on. You are gaslighting to say that there's not. That's bothersome. I'm looking for you to be accountable. And even if it just starts off with saying the truth. Hey, you know what? I do think that we have a problem with dark skin. Probably stems from slavery. And so as a result, we intentionally, whether we consciously or subconsciously do it, we probably do choose women that look lighter than us because we don't want our children to look black. Well, why not start there? But no, instead it's, well, we can't have a preference. Well, we can't desire what we desire. We can't like what we like. And that is what makes me say this conversation is disingenuous. You know, to white people that are friends and well, can't quite be family, but, you know, friends or coworkers or people that I really care about. But when I have these conversations with them and I tell them the truth of what I feel, what I experience, and it automatically goes into, well, are you sure you're not just assuming the worst of that person? They're probably not even thinking about your race. You know what's funny? And I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna be done in a minute. What's so funny to me is I hear white people say that all the time. Like, no one's even thinking about you being black. But then when I listen to them be like, I don't want to go to the hood. There's lots of other races there. I thought we weren't thinking about race. I thought color didn't matter. I thought it was about the content of your character, right? So all of a sudden, you're proving to me in real time you do think about race more than you think, more than you say. But it's in my head when I'm assuming that other people are just like you and actually think about